Hi guys, welcome to my channel. So the opinion I'm going to share today may not sit well with many of you. I know that it is a very emotional and touchy subject to begin with, and my opinion may differ from many of you. But if you sit tight and listen with an open mind, you may at least kind of understand why I am saying what I am. It has been rumored that the Tennessee Department of Family and Children's may be moving towards termination of parental rights and away from reunification for the Wells family. And at first glance, that is something that a lot of people may feel that they want to applaud. You know, it would be great for Josie and Waylon and Wyatt to be removed permanently from Ben Hill Road and from Candus and Dawn and have a better chance at a happy, healthy, and stable life with a new family. And I agree, if it were that simple, I too may be on board. But sadly, the statistics doesn't really back up that is likely to be their reality. Now, of course, it could be. And if it goes in that direction, I certainly hope that for the boys, that is exactly how the future plays out. But the statistics in Tennessee and really across the United States paint a different picture. You see, Tennessee has one of the most unstable child welfare systems in the entire United States. Currently, there are almost 9,000 children in foster care in the state of Tennessee, with only 4,000 active foster homes. Many of the children in Tennessee have been known to be sleeping in the office on the floor of the child welfare system because they didn't have homes to send them to. They've even had to utilize hospital beds just to have somewhere to send the children. You can't send them somewhere if that place doesn't exist, and they just don't have enough foster homes. And that is actually a very common problem across the United States. But Tennessee is really struggling with it. The Commission for Children and Youth in Tennessee took a hard look at the child welfare system to see what the problems were and how they could be addressed. And what they found was shocking and sombering. They found that Tennessee lags behind every other state in almost every area of their foster care system. The children in Tennessee are likely to be moved and shuffled from one foster home to another in 1 year at a rate of 2 times the national average. The children are displaying high levels of PTSD, social and emotional behavioral problems. Now, granted, part of that is the trauma of being removed from their home and whatever was going on in the home prior to them being removed. But we're talking about the effects of being in the foster care system. And for those that don't get adopted or reunified with their families, they have a very high chance of just living out the remainder of their juvenile years just shuffling around the system. Only 25% of children in foster care will actually get adopted. That's leaving a lot of children to just kind of wade through home to home until they are of age to live independently. And that's where the statistics get really sad. On top of the fact that these children in their later adolescence and teen years have an extremely high rate of mental illness, substance abuse issues, and school dropout rates, We then have the issue of how to transition them from foster care into adulthood, independent living. And the foster care system across the United States, again, specifically in Tennessee, shows that there is just not enough support for these kids. They are kind of like when people get out of prison and they're just thrown out there, right? Here's $10 and a bus ticket, right? That's kind of what we do in the correctional system. And we know how that isn't working out and why the recidivism rate is so high. It's kind of the same thing for children who reach legal age in foster care. They have a substantially higher rate of homelessness and criminal activity than those that were either reunified or went on to be adopted in the system. So when we look at all of this, we have to look at the Wells 3 boys. One of the risks specifically for Josie is his age. Older kids are much harder to place in the system. According to this study by the Commission of Children and Youth, older children present additional challenges. Foster homes are less likely to want to take on older children. And so those children are much harder to place and even much harder to adopt out. Sibling groups are astronomically higher in terms of problematic placements. Taking a sibling group for a home that may already have other foster children, may have their own children, may not have the space, it is very hard to keep siblings together. They almost always end up separated. For these children who have already gone through the trauma of being removed from home and losing their younger sister, it's really sad to think about them losing each other. And that is most likely, if it hasn't already happened, is going to be an outcome for them. Living together for any duration of time in the same foster home is probably not going to happen. And if they are freed for adoption through termination of parental rights, it is very unlikely that they will all be adopted together. So when we look at some of the emotional and mental health issues that are presented in children in foster care, what we see is that when we look at children that have had the same trauma, whether it be neglect or abuse in their biological home, the rate of PTSD, for example, for children in the foster care system is 20%. For children that had the same problems in their biological family but were kept in the home and maybe services were just brought in rather than a removal of the children, the rate drops to 11%. So we see that it is substantially higher when you now compound the original trauma, again, be it abuse or neglect, with the trauma of the removal from the home. As a whole, children show that they do better long-term in their life if they remain in their biological home or in a kinship home if they need to be removed for any length of time versus being placed with strangers or foster parents. So again, let's look at the Wells children. We know that the Wells had a shit show for a home. We get it. I mean, they had everything you could even imagine. We all watched as intergenerational addiction and mental health issues and unhealed traumas played out in real time in front of us since the day Summer went missing. We cannot for even a minute say that the children probably were not living an ideal childhood in the Wells home. But as far as removing them permanently, should we jump there? Should we go there as a first option? Remember, we have our opinions, we have our suspicions. The Wells have not been charged in the disappearance of Summer. So we really can't even use the disappearance of Summer Wells as a reason for Candus and Dawn not to get their children back. Children have gone missing in many, many cases across the United States, and those families did not lose their other biological children in the majority of cases. So regardless of where you stand in the guilt or the innocence of Dawn and Candus, we can't really use Summer as a reason. We need to just kind of put that out of our minds for a minute and look at just the boys. We know that there was addiction, and certainly if Candus's friend Kathy, who has come out and spoke, should be believed, we know Candus made an attempt to go to rehab and she left. She couldn't hack it. She said that it was too stressful. She was overwhelmed. She wasn't ready, whatever the reason. So that's a high priority, right? Is that we cannot have addiction in the home and have the children remain there. It is a complete catastrophe for children to remain living in a home where there is active and rampant addiction taking place. So that needs to be addressed. I get that. It should be absolutely on the parenting plan that Candus would absolutely have to go and address her alcohol issues and or whatever other issues may be playing out in that home, substance-wise. I would assume that that is on her parenting plan, and her lack of fulfilling that requirement, if it is true that they are looking at possible permanent termination of parental rights, that may be one of the reasons that she is not fulfilling her obligation to get clean. Now, whether or not she is drinking or doing substances, I don't know. I'm just saying that I imagine that rehab would have been a requirement through the department. A lot of people have suggested that physical abuse may have been another reason that the boys were removed. And I don't know if the department found any abuse to be substantiated. I do not know. However, I will say this. 22 states in the United States allow for corporal punishment, and Tennessee is one of them. So, and it's very vague in what they define as corporal punishment. Some states, it's very clear. It's written very clearly. In some states, it's as simple as you can't leave physical marks on the child. Tennessee's is a little bit more vague. Basically just says that the child cannot become disabled or seriously wounded due to corporal punishment. And in fact, in 1979, a law was enacted giving Tennessee schools the right to use corporal punishment. And that law is still in effect. So it may not be actively happening in all schools in Tennessee. It actually was given to each district to make their own decision on that, but legally they can. So I'm not sure, what level of physical discipline it would take in Tennessee for that to be a reason for the children not to be returned. In most cases, in most states, if there is physical abuse, the parents are given parenting classes and some support to learn how to discipline more effectively and perhaps without using physical discipline. Whether or not that was offered to the Wells, I don't know. I know that Dawn made a comment that they felt that they were jumping through hoops. So many things were required of them, and that due to his work schedule and yada, 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 they were having a difficult time meeting all of these expectations and requirements. So parenting classes may have been given to them as a requirement in getting the boys back. And maybe they just haven't fulfilled that. I don't know. But overall, we know that they would have to get their substance abuse under control. We know that potentially they would need to learn how to parent more effectively and less physically. Although I don't even know if they really were abusing the boys. I'm just going, I guess by the rumor mill. And, we had that situation where Allie's friend, had this whole story about how the boys laid on the hot concrete and whatever. I don't even know that I don't know how much stock I put into her. So I'm not going to take that as fact. Then we, of course, have the physical home. Is it safe? Now, let me tell you something. Believe it or not, the Department of Family and Children's do not have really high standards in how clean your home has to be to keep your children. I keep a very clean home because I choose to do that. I have friends and family that have very messy homes, and they have very, happy and well cared for children. The Wells certainly went beyond messy into really unsanitary. So is that cause for removal of a child? Not necessarily. Oftentimes, you will be given a period of time from the time that social services comes in and sees how you're living, and they may say you have 72 hours to have this place in at least sanitary conditions. And that, of course, doesn't mean toys have to be off the floor. That doesn't mean that, there can't be clothes strewn around. That would mean things like, if there's a substantial bug issue, and I don't mean, a couple of creepy crawlers, but an actual infestation, that would be required to clean up because that can cause serious health problems. And not that you could do that in 72 hours, but you would have to at least show the progress of making that happen, whether that was you called somebody in, a professional, whatever. There couldn't be garbage. There couldn't be animal waste, all over the place in the home. Those things would be considered unsanitary, not the toys, not the clothes, not all of that. And in terms of the physical structure, it would have to be safe. Now, I've looked at the pictures of the Wells home. It's really hard to tell, if it's just kind of run down or if the physical structure is actually unsafe. And that's kind of hard to tell because there was so much stuff around that you kind of couldn't get past looking at that in the photos. So that in of itself is not a reason not to send the children back home. It would be another thing that they would have to show that they were willing to keep a safe and somewhat clean environment for the children to return home. So I don't know. I don't know that all of these things weren't demanded of them and they just haven't done them. I don't know if the department has other information that we're not privy to, and that's what they're basing, this possible new direction of the case. The boys have been in care now for quite a while, and each state has kind of their own timeline of how long they'll kind of give parents to get on board with the parenting plan, fulfill everything, and get the children back before the children are then terminated from their parents and move towards adoption and permanency placement. If the statistics looked brighter, then I would say you've had quite a while, right? These kids have been lingering in the system now for quite some time. But in this case, I worry. I worry with the ages of the children, if adoption is going to be something that's going to be realistic for them. I worry especially Josie being so much older, what the long-term effects may be of him just kind of wafting through the system with, no permanency. I worry about the trauma that they've already had, whatever their early experiences were, being taken from their parents and the loss of their sister, now compounded with a possible unstable childhood in the system without permanency. I really worry about these things. If, of course, the parents were charged in the disappearance of the sister, that would be a no-brainer. But since they haven't been, and we can't really look at that right now as a contributing factor, looking at everything else, I just wonder, look, I don't, this case has gone on for so long, and my mind has switched back and forth so many times, and I've always leaned towards accident. If you watch any of my previous videos, I've always been on the accident side of things. I really think that there was probably an accident that was covered up. And that's horrible. I mean, that's horrible. Who does that? Do I think Candus was a great mom? No. Do I think that she loved her children? Yes. Do I think that they had kind of a subpar childhood in terms of parenting and having their needs met? Yeah. But, they seem to have had some kind of enjoyment and play and good times. And I think there was some love there between Candus and her children. I guess it's kind of weighing which one is going to be worse long term for these three boys. Tell me what you think. I know it's a hot button discussion. I know that a lot of people are going to disagree with me, but I have a lot of concerns. I have a lot of concerns that, us cheering on termination may not necessarily be the best answer. Tell me what you think. Read the statistics for yourself and, and then really think about it. Look, summer aside, Candus will not write any mom blogs anytime soon. I get it. And we know they ate $1 pizza from Dollar General every night, whatever they ate. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody is the picture perfect parent. But if we know that children overall, statistically, mental health wise, socially, emotionally, do better if they remain in their biological family despite all of the other factors, then we have to really think about this. We have to really think about what is best for those boys. Right now, I'm not so sure. Now, I guess nothing should or could really happen. I mean, it could, because like I said, they don't always remove children if a sibling goes missing. But I guess at this point where things are at, maybe I wouldn't rush to send them back. Candus has a lot of work to do. Dawn has a lot of work to do. That house has a lot of work to do. There's a lot of work to be done. TBI has a lot of work to do. I'm not saying rush tomorrow and send them home, but I'm saying I don't know that rushing towards termination is the answer. Tell me your thoughts, and I will see you soon. Bye.